part of why we love technology is because it's always moving forward, but that's also what makes it difficult to know when the right time is to upgrade. At Intentional Tech, we like to take a step back from the FOMO and adopt a more mindful approach as to whether we should bring a new product into our lives. In that spirit, here are 5 questions you should ask yourself before upgrading. First of all, what will this new tech enable you to do that you couldn't do before? And I'm going to use my camera as an example of this because when I started out on YouTube, I was using this Sony RX100 Mark II. This is a camera that I picked up about 6 years ago for a trip to Japan. Served me pretty well for the first 50 YouTube videos that I made for this channel. From that point on though, I realised that it had started to limit me in 5 key areas. For one thing, I could only film 30 minutes of footage before it stopped recording, and for someone who's not used to speaking to a camera, that means you're never going to get through one video without having to stand up and take a second one halfway through. Secondly, I found that I was always out of frame because there was no way for me to flip the display further than a 90-degree angle. Audio always suffered because there was no way for me to plug an external microphone into this camera. And then there were just some things that I wanted to do that would future-proof me as a creator and give me options going forward. So I needed a camera that could shoot in 4K and have the ability to swap lenses so that I could experiment with different focal lengths. It was only when I'd used this camera for long enough that I was able to identify the 5 key areas that I really needed in an upgrade, and that meant that I could choose the right camera for me based on my budget and my needs. The second thing you should ask yourself is how long is this product going to last? If you buy a MacBook, I would always recommend that you get the highest amount of RAM as you can afford, because that's going to give you much more longevity and might even end up giving you an extra year or 2 out of your device. And it's also good to be aware of companies' release cadences. iPhones, for example, usually come out at the end of September or in October. So if you're picking up the top of the range iPhone in August, it's just something to be aware of. And you might want to just wait it out a little bit before renewing your contract. The new models aren't always the best. So the third question I want you to ask yourself, is an older model better in some way? When the iPad Mini 6 launched last year, it was really easy to get carried away with some of its new features and the beautiful new design. But when it comes to practicalities, the iPad Mini 5 is still decent in a few ways. For example, bezels aren't necessarily a bad thing. They can actually be pretty comfortable if you're holding an iPad in bed. But also that jump from iPad Mini 5 to 6 specifically meant that you would have to buy a completely new Apple Pencil if you wanted it to be compatible with your new device. And so that's another £100 or so that you need to factor into the cost. And that's just one way in which the older design might actually be better for your current needs. If you've boxed off all of that, I want you to ask yourself, how adaptable is this device should my circumstances change? For example, what happens if you buy a computer to get into video editing and you realize that you actually don't enjoy it that much and you'd much rather use your computer to learn how to code? Understanding whether your device has that flexibility is a really key factor in whether you should pick it up or not. And the most important question that I want you to ask yourself today is this product a cost or an investment? Because let's face it, tech products are incredibly expensive, but they don't have to be a cost if you can actually make a living using them over the long term. If you get that new camera and you teach yourself how to make photographs and videos, that could potentially become a really rewarding hobby or skill. It could potentially become a career. And so if you look at your products as investments in yourself and in the long term, it can really give you a different mindset about what you actually want to pick up. Devices these days are constantly being iterated upon with operating system updates and other new releases. So I would really encourage you to just look in your iPhone settings and see what new features you're not taking advantage of. I've got a video about my intentional iPhone setup right here where I did just that. But thanks so much for watching this video, and I will see you in a bit.